Assalamu alaikum ji. I think the poster was a bit misleading. It said art and paleontology, so I won't be talking about them. I wish I could, love both of them, but it is what we leave behind. And I think this is such a huge and a vast topic, which is good and bad. It's good because you have so many different perspectives, people bringing personal experiences, something I won't be doing. I'll be bringing a personal perspective rather than an experience, which I think is good because let's not make it too monotonous in that regard. And in that regard, I think the most important question is the statement, what we leave behind, what does it actually mean? It is actually something that can be rephrased as legacy. It is something that can be rephrased as the great mission, the meaning of life, why are we actually here? And in order to further delve into it, it is important to define the perspective with which we want to decide what we are going to leave behind. You know, the topic says what we leave behind. It doesn't say what you or I leave behind. So we need to be very clear about in what capacity are we going to leave behind something, in what capacity are we going to leave behind legacy. So it's three divisions. You can leave behind something as an individual. You can leave behind something as a group of individuals, which is a nation or an empire. And you can leave something behind as a civilization. A civilization spanning one planet, multiple planets, depending on how high you want to go on the Kardashev scale. So now that we know three capacities, what do these three types, these three avenues leave behind? First of all, let's look at a civilization. Are there any traces of planetary civilization that existed? No, there isn't. Perhaps there are certain vague findings in archaeological finds, but nothing. Perhaps you might find some beliefs, practices in different cultures that might be remnants of some ancient beliefs, some ancient civilization, but otherwise no. What we do know is what various nations and empires have left behind. And we need to go back all the way to recorded history. So you have the Egyptians, you have the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, the Muslims after that, and then the current empire that we are living in, the British and the American Empire. What does an empire leave behind? An empire can leave behind a lot of things, ideas, structures, the very thing that if you look at the Punjab assembly architecture, the pillars, the arches, they're similar to Egyptian temples. They're similar to Roman and Greek temples. This is global influence. The parliamentary system, the parliamentary debates coming in from Rome, an organized army. Going to the Muslim empire, you look up at the sky and more than half the stars and constellations have Arabic names. Contributions to medicines, contribution to arts, contribution to science. And then on to the British and American Empire. We're speaking in English right now. The influences in our own town. The National College of Arts used to be called the Mayo School of Arts, and the uniform was a turban, a kurta, and a pajama. And that's what it was. But now it's changed. This is influence from an empire, from a nation that has its influence across borders and continents. And then, most importantly to a lot of people, what does an individual leave behind? Well, first you have to ask yourself that. Ask yourself, all the people around you, your families, the teachers, the faculties that you've ever come in touch with, or the leaders that you've seen on television or heard about or read about in newspapers and various media, national leaders, global leaders, that have meant something to you. What does a human being leave? A human being leaves behind his writings, his or her works in books, in art, in literature, in poetry. They might start a business empire, or they might start a movement. These are deeds, and these are deeds that everybody does. So now that we know that the three capacities, a civilization or an empire or a person or a nation in which something can be left behind, what is actually the entire background? What is the actual reason, the whole movement, the whole logic behind leaving something behind? Do we even have a choice for it? Unfortunately, we do not have a choice in it. Because what we leave behind is the outcome of our struggles. And whether we like it or not, our struggles will leave something behind. It is something we do not have a choice with, even if we do nothing. And I'll come to that. So if what we leave behind is determined by our struggle, how would we define a struggle? as we defined three clear categories of capacities in which an individual or a group of individuals can leave a legacy to coming generations, similarly, a struggle can be of two different types. A struggle can be for a person, an individual, whether they're heading a unit in a hospital, whether they're leading a bank, a business empire. It can be a totally selfish existence, born only to the betterment of oneself or one's close family, but not to the department. Something any doctor, anybody in the service, anybody in a private corporation can relate to. We've all come across individuals like that, as we have seen in this very hospital. And then, a struggle can be a moral struggle. It can be something for greater than oneself. It can be something for a greater cause. It can be something for one's afterlife. So, three different examples here. If you want to look at a material struggle, you can look at, and if you want to look at nations, what have they left behind? You can look at Belgium. What do you know them for? You know them for their diamonds, what came in from Africa. Or you would know them from the genocide in Congo, the biggest genocide ever perpetrated by a European country in human history, far beyond what you've read about in Auschwitz. But it's because the people being killed were black, so we don't read about it. If you look further, another example, the East India Company. Well, all we know about it is their so-called exploits over here in the subcontinent. But I do urge all of you to read The Anarchy by William Dalrymple. It's a wonderful book. And it's great that critiques of these empires are coming on from their own ranks. And do read what the East India Company, what we don't know is what they did in China. So I do urge all of you to check out this series of short documentaries on the opium wars in China, again perpetrated by the East India Company. And again, this is a legacy by a group of people from a nation, from an empire. It wasn't something good. And then all this materialism, you have to ask yourself the question, to what end? To which I invented a mind game. It's about this hypothetical person who's 40 years old. He's got a beautiful wife, excellent business, he's got healthy children, his family's healthy, his parents are healthy, he's got a wonderful home. You know, he's spending his winters skiing in the Alps, and he's spending his summers in the French Riviera. And he's got the nicest cars by Gandini, by Pininfarina. But the catch is he's 40 years old and the year is 1970. So go forward to 55 years today, 2025. The same person is 95 years old. So that begs the question, to what end? To what end are we going to pursue a material life? I mean, Chuck Palahniuk put it very beautifully in his novel Fight Club, which was later made on into a very interesting film, whereby the whole concept of materialism and the whole concept of material pursuit is just thrown out the window. And conversely, if you're looking at somebody who's looking at the afterlife, it's another thought experiment. I mean, suppose any one of you were in Houston at mission control and controlling one of the Apollo missions, and the astronauts, Shepard and Armstrong, they were all on the moon, and they're there for 10 days. The oxygen supplies are supposed to run out. They're supposed to come back to Earth in 10 days. And they're not busy doing experiments. They're not busy collecting samples. And all they're doing is decorating their moon base. They're pimping out their dune buggy. They're painting it, getting new tires and everything. Wouldn't you be mad at them? Wouldn't you be thinking that these people are there for a limited amount of time? They're supposed to do a mission, but what are they doing? They're doing irrelevant stuff. And they know the oxygen supplies are going to run out. They're going to come back. So what does that brings us into? It brings us into another moral dilemma, and something that academics can relate to. Because we talked about the fact that you will leave something behind even if you don't. So another mental game I invented, it's actually a syndrome, it's called the Calcutta syndrome. There's something very common in the subcontinent that you have teachers, you have professors, you have head of institutes, or specialists in various fields who retire without transmitting knowledge to a single person, without transmitting their skill to a different person. We've had two such individuals even in a department in this hospital. One who retired without training a single person in their field, and the other whose trainees are heading units from Karachi to Gilgit. You don't have a person in Gwadar yet. Hopefully we should. But what is the Kolkata-Karolinska syndrome? I have a friend who did his PhD from the Karolinska Institute. And the Karolinska Institute is the institute that awards the Nobel Prize in medicine. And I asked him, do you have any professors who retire without training anybody, without teaching anybody, they just go to their grave? He said, yes, we do. And that gave me a bit of relief. I thought this is just it's not just limited to the subcontinent, it's everywhere. But that is their legacy. It is nothing, and that is viewed negatively. So if you want to consider all of that, and then you have to consider the concept of a moral struggle for an afterlife. Well, the question of the afterlife obviously then begs the question, are we in a simulation? Well, the question of whether or not we're in a simulation was asked about 3-4 years ago in the Isaac Asimov debate. Lisa Randall, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Elon Musk, everybody was there. We don't totally agree with Elon. He's displaying a lot of Dutch white racist supremacy vibes lately, but you have to give him what he's done. And the whole argument, the whole discussion was about whether or not we're in a simulation. Well, over 1 billion Muslims believe we're in a simulation. We believe this isn't real. We believe the real thing is outside. But not to give a TED talk limited to just one religion. If you extrapolate it to other Abrahamic religions, the belief is the same, that this world is temporary and the afterlife is real. Whatever deeds you do, decide what is going to happen in the afterlife. And extrapolate it further to Hinduism, to Buddhism. Now, this is back from 7th grade, so I don't clearly remember when we were studying world religions in school. But back in 7th grade, we were taught there are 2 types of Buddhism, Hinayana and Mahayana. If I'm not mistaken, Mahayana believes that there is resurrection, depending on the deeds that you do, just like Hinduism. So in certain beliefs, there are recurring cycles, and you get reincarnated as a creature, depending on your deeds, in a place, depending on your deeds. So it's universal. It isn't something that is simply limited to one religion. Somebody might argue, well, the atheists don't believe in this. They don't believe in an afterlife. Well, the simple thing is there are a lot of atheists, especially in various Western academia and closet atheists in our own country as well, who do believe that there might be, even if you don't believe in an afterlife, you have to exist morally. We have to stand for principle. I'm sure there might be even a few atheists in the flotilla that the Israeli Navy recently busted. So if the entire world around us is a simulation, and if our deeds determine our own afterlife, then what we leave behind as a result of our struggle actually determines our final fate, our eternal existence. So, since the initial question was that what we leave behind can be rephrased as the great mission, as the great meaning of life, as Captain Willard famously said in Apocalypse Now, I needed a mission for my sins and they brought it to me like room service, and I didn't want another one again. So if there's a code to the universe of the afterlife, then doesn't that mean that the code is that every single moment of your existence needs to do something that determines your final fate, that determines your legacy? I thought about it. I thought that, what is the code of the universe? And do we know any humans who've actually cracked it? And instantly I realized, Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq. I believe he was one of the people who cracked the code of the universe. How did he do it? I'll give an example. 2 of you have gone trekking near K2 base camp, and you need a rest. And 2-3 buddies, and somebody's resting against a rock, and the other guy's lying down. His head is resting on the other person's thigh. If the person sitting down is me, I'd probably whip out a sketchbook, start sketching, while my friend sleeps with his head on my thigh. I'd taken my boots off because, let's let the sweat dry. Anybody who's done hiking knows that you don't want wet socks. And suppose an insect or some other animal were to bite my toe. I would obviously wince. I would get up. My friend wouldn't mind. Because after all, he is my friend. He would be concerned about my well-being, about my health. But what does Abu Bakr do? He didn't flinch. It was his best friend. He would have been concerned. He didn't say anything. Why? Because he had mathematically calculated that this would mean greater reward in the afterlife. The cave was right in front. They could have walked. He carried his friend because greater reward. The old woman is hungry. I need to feed her. I don't need to show anybody. Another very important aspect, at least in the faith of the Abrahamic believers, that do good deeds but don't show anybody. So I will deliver food to that old lady. What's the best time when nobody's watching? Oh, before morning prayer. Hey, what is happening? Somebody's tugging against my shirt. Why? Because that somebody happens to be my best friend who's also cracked the code of the universe, who also knows that every single moment needs to be spent in doing good. That was Hazrat Umar catching Hazrat Abu Bakr's kurta before Fajr prayer. So that is the code. That is the great question. What you're going to leave behind is a sum of your actions. It's a sum of your struggles. And whether or not you do any struggle, people said they wanted a personal perspective. So I wouldn't give a personal experience, but I will give a personal perspective. I've been to this hospital for 20 years, and I've seen examples in other institutions as well. We've seen people who have come into departments, led them, and left behind absolutely nothing. We have seen people in various government institutes who have left behind absolutely nothing in terms of manpower or principle or ethos or morals. And on the flip side, we have people who are revered like deities, even 15, 20 years after their retirement. And I'm sure our colleagues in the government service can easily think for a second, and they can think of people in the civil service, in medicine, in cricket, who they revere. And there are also, at the same time, people who might be outwardly to us who are not in your field. There might be people outside who are not in medicine, who might be revering doctors, who might be revering cricketers, who might be revering civil servants.